mom posted a video on how Fortnite is so addicting, especially for me because, like she said in that video, I was addicted. I will probably put an iCard or the link down below in the description to watch that video, but all she said was definitely true. And so, of course, from all that, I'm definitely never playing Fortnite again. And my dad, I never got the Xbox taken away, so my dad is searching games that I can play for you guys and post on Wednesdays. But until then, I'm just going to be posting vlogs on Sunday. And today,
Hey friends, it's Katie from Without a Crystal Ball. Welcome back to my channel. It's Monday, March 25th, 2024. I hope everyone's having a wonderful day. If you're new to the story of Ruby Franke, this channel has been covering her since 2020. And on Friday, there was a records release by Washington County prosecutors released a treasure trove of photos, documents, videos, and audio of the case against Ruby Franke and Jodi Hildebrandt. And in this, there were phone calls that were made by both Ruby and Jodi while they had been in the detention center in Washington County. Now, interestingly, between the years of about 2020 to 2023, Ruby Franke was estranged from her entire family. She didn't speak to her sisters, her parents, her brother, anyone. Over time between 2019 and 2023, Ruby basically removed everyone from her life that wasn't interested in her involvement in a group called Connections with a woman named Jodi Hildebrandt. In 2020, Ruby began talking a lot more on her channel about her involvement with Jodi Hildebrandt and how she was studying and going back to quote unquote school to become a life coach. And she would frequently bring her children onto camera and talk with them about what she was learning in her life coaching. And she would use her life coaching skills on her own children. And Jodi was teaching her how to be a life coach. Ruby then became obsessed with living in the world of truth, because in Jodi's world, there was only two things. You either lived in truth or you were distorted. And distortion was basically anything that Jodi didn't agree with. Distortion could also change based on Jodi's opinions, Jodi's feelings, and Jodi's thoughts. So Ruby was learning these modalities by Jodi, which basically said that if you weren't living in truth, you were playing the victim. And in order to get back into truth, you had to stop playing the victim and be accountable for every single thing that happens in your life. Ruby started implementing all of these techniques on her kids. One video that she made in May of 2020 became very bad for her career because Chad disclosed in this video that Ruby had taken away his bed and his bedroom for 7 months. Chad said he slept on a beanbag. Ruby said that he slept on the floor. YouTubers created videos over these concerns, and there was a video earlier that same spring where she discussed how her daughter E had gone to school without a lunch. Now, at 6 years old, she was making her kids make their own lunches for school. At 6 years old, she was making them do all of their own laundry and basically take care of themselves. Because under Jodi's modalities, children are not treated like children, they are treated like adults, and they are expected to provide for themselves. Everything that a parent provides is considered a privilege, and so anything can be taken away. So common requirements of parenting, such as feeding, clothing, providing shelter, caring for their mental and emotional well-being, all of those are privileges under the modalities of Jodi. And if you are going to be in line with Jodi, you must earn your privileges. And so Ruby, started taking privileges, which was food and beds and doing their laundry and taking them to school and making their lunches, and she put that on the kids. By the time Ruby got involved with Jodi, she was, I would say, at burnout level with mothering. She started her channel to be a model as a Mormon mother and model the Mormon culture to women as what a healthy model of a mother looks like. She even said this in one of her very last videos on her channel, where she said, I started this channel to be a model of a healthy mother in this world and to bring a community to other mothers. Her channel heavily focused on her life in the Mormon church. She discussed going to the temple, the kids had their baptisms, they would go to church, all of that not filmed, obviously, but her deep faith was a huge part of their channel. Not to mention her husband, Kevin, worked at Brigham Young University as a professor in engineering. Her channel ended up getting destroyed once she started bringing in the modalities of Jodi and implementing them on her children on her channel. And as she and Jodi got more and more invested, Ruby, for the first time, I think, felt like she had a sense of purpose outside of her kids. I think because of her culture in the Mormon world, where she's expected to be a stay-at-home mom and take care of all of the kids, she got married very young and didn't really have a chance to grow up herself young. And she had her first child, Sherry, I think when she was like 22 or 21. Ruby grew up with her kids. And as her kids got older and Ruby entered her 40s, Ruby got tired of being a mom. And it was very clear that Jodi was giving her an out to be a mom. And before Ruby brought the kids to Jodi's house, Ruby had just basically abandoned them. I think one part that people are forgetting about in all of this coverage is that prior to what happened to E and R, Ruby basically left E, R, and her two older daughters who were teenagers in Springville, Utah, at their home by themselves for weeks at a time, take care of themselves. And the kids would be found wandering around, looking to play with people, weren't in school, had no one to take care of them. And as more and more reports were being made to CPS, Ruby had a problem on her hands because she couldn't have her two youngest kids by themselves. Ruby didn't want to be a parent anymore. And so what she did was she, in my opinion, took her kids to Jodi, and they needed to find a way to get rid of them. And the prosecutors in Utah said very succinctly on 2020 over the weekend that had Ruby and Jodi not been arrested and had R not escaped, they would not be alive today. Journals released by prosecutors in Utah reveal that Ruby was escalating in her beliefs about her children, consistently calling them evil, comparing them to snakes and slithering, and calling and saying to them that she will rid them of Satan and win, no matter at what cost. She convinced herself that her kids were possessed by Satan and it was her job to beat Satan out of them. And she would do whatever it took. She even planned to just move to Arizona and dump them on a piece of property to work. That was going to be their job. At the time that R escaped and she was finally arrested, the kids did survive. And Ruby became initially defiant and told her husband Kevin very early on, within days of her arrest, that the kids were exaggerating, that it wasn't really as bad as it was, that they didn't need to be in the hospital, that the world didn't understand evil, how evil children are, and that it's the parents' responsibility to fix the kids and save the kids. And by December, Ruby was changing her tune and started looking at Jodi as mentally ill and getting Jodi out of her mind and getting the modalities out of her mind. And she started thinking more rationally. In December, she spoke on the phone with her sister, Julie. And I want to play for you the majority of that call so you can hear the difference in her. But I gave you this whole understanding of who she was before playing this call so you can kind of understand on the flip side how she sounds afterwards. I want to be clear though, I do think that a part of Ruby in these calls is still being very manipulative, and I still believe that despite the fact that she has Jodi out of her brain, she still is not living in reality.
Did you see that Jodi pled guilty today?
I did see that. Yes. Is that a relief for you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a big relief. It's a big relief. There would have been positive the other way too. Had she not pled guilty, there's enough evidence that she could have been convicted for life. But that would have been messy. It would have been really messy, and the kids would have. So.
So do you and her get the same outcome no matter what now, or is there a chance that it would be different?
That's a really good question. That's one that I've asked Lamar. No, we can still have different outcomes. So Ellie asked a little bit about this. I wrote it out in a text to her. But so the next thing that will happen is I will fill out, and she will fill out probation and there's another P, paperwork. And basically you go through your history and you tell them your history, which there's no history on me. There's nothing, no criminal history, no mental health history, nothing. And I'm also hiring a professional to do a mental health evaluation, just to say she's good, like there's no mental health problems at all. And then that will go to my probationary board. Jodi, she can lie on her paperwork, and she probably will. I don't think she's going to give them her history. But I think in the interview it's going to be apparent that she's mentally ill.
Ruby sounds a lot less agitated in these audio clips, but it also is very interesting to me that she is very willing to say that Jodi is mentally ill, but then says, I have no history of mental illness. In fairness, this is a woman that wouldn't have treated her mental illness anyway because she believed that she could just solve everything through faith. I don't know that a mental health evaluation is going to work exactly the way that Ruby thinks, because Ruby had high levels of anxiety, high levels of stress, was paranoid even before Jodi came into her life. I think there will be findings, in my opinion, that she has mental illness of her own that she's not treating. But she believes that having this evaluation is going to get her out in a couple months, maybe a few years. And I feel like even though she's changed her tune, I feel a lot of that changing of her tune is not so much about Jodi, but her not wanting to go to prison forever and wanting a way out, which feels a little bit manipulative because she still doesn't really speak too much about what she did to her kids.
And so that will affect how long someone, because they're looking, how repentant are you? How much responsibility are you taking? How are you aware that what you've done is wrong? And she's not. The only reason she pled is because she didn't want to do life. She knew I would testify. The other thing is, on my plea deal, when I come up for probation, the prosecuting attorney can, often, if they think that you're a danger to society, will talk to the probationary board or write them a letter saying, I think she needs to stay where she is. He's going to stay neutral and not write any letter when my probation comes up, which is a really big deal. But for her, he's not going to stay neutral. So we can come up to probation and I can get off on probation and she may not.
So what does probation look like? Like, what does that all entail?
It can look like several different things, I think. I'm still learning about this, and I think I never realized how complicated it is. I always thought you pled guilty and they tell you how long you're in.
Yeah, there's a lot of terminology to know.
Yeah. yeah, and you know, half of the stuff that is said goes over my head, and then I have to go, you know, I come back and I ask the girls here, I'm like, what does this mean? What does this mean?
Yeah.
But probation could look like going home. Like, you could go home. Sometimes, you know, it might look like going home with restrictions, like you can go home, but you need to live with somebody who's responsible and you can't be around certain people. Like, they may say you could go home if your parents agree to house you, but you can't go home to where your kids are living. It could look like something like that. Or it could look like something where I have an ankle monitor. Or it could look like you can go home if you pay a $10,000 fine. Or maybe it could look like instead of serving the rest of your time, we'll give you some good time and you can go home in half the time. Or so I think that probation, getting off on probation, I think looks like there's several different ways that could happen.
Oh, I see. That's good to know.
Yeah.
Ruby, her mindset is still not there yet, because she's saying, I might get probation and be able to go home, as though she'll be able to be paroled and on probation and go home to her kids, which will never happen. They will never allow her to have access to those kids again. The prosecutor in the case told 2020 that his hope for justice is that Ruby is behind bars until her children are adults and they are capable and able to manage her outside of prison and able to cope with her being free. And not necessarily about whether or not she's reformed, but the safety of her victims. Ruby, at her sentencing hearing, was crying and going all over the place about her ducklings, and she kept them in safety and she led them astray. And then you read her journals and you realize what a bunch of crocodile tears her entire sentencing speech was. It was a performance. And for her, it feels like she's taking this plea deal so that she can get out what she thinks in months. It's delusional, but she doesn't see it that way.
Is that usually after you've already served some time then?
Say that one more time.
That's after you have served some time?
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't know what that is going to be. I don't know if it's... One of the girls said that it would be for me 6 months, but I've also heard it could be 4 years, and some people serve several years before they ever see their probation board. So I'm really still, I mean, I could be in there 4 years, I could be in there 30. Like, I really don't know.
Yeah. And that will come in February?
On February 20th.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
When was the last time you talked to her? Was it that day?
It was when we were arrested.
Okay.
Yeah. I left early in the morning to go to a dentist appointment with Julie. We left at like 3 in the morning. And she called me sometime in the morning. And so I went back down. But when I got to the house, I mean, it looked like the movies. There was a red fire truck. There was a black van with tinted windows. There were 2 ambulances. There were 20 cop cars. I mean, it was.
Did you just sit in your car?
No, I pulled up and found a spot to park. She lives on a cul-de-sac. I parked in the cul-de-sac, and I walked up, and the driveway was just full of cops, and I just walked up to the cops, and they said, "Are you the mother?" And I nodded my head, and so they took me and put me in the casita, and I sat there for a couple hours. I just sat there, and then they were finishing looking through the house and stuff, I think, and some of the guys were coming in and out with pizza, and so I think Eve was still there because the ambulance car was there, eating pizza with the police, and then once the kids were taken in the ambulance cars, then the detective came and patted me down and arrested me, and then took me to the courthouse for questioning, which I didn't. And I'm glad I didn't say anything because Lamar was really helpful.
Anytime she's asked a question by her sister Julie, she ends up going on like a 5-minute, all of these details about a situation that doesn't necessarily need to be explained. And it's interesting to me that she's so proud of herself for not saying anything when she was arrested. If you've seen any of the video of her when she is with the police, you will see that she looks like she is catatonic. She doesn't even say yes or no. She just blinks her eyes. She doesn't even acknowledge them. It's almost like she's so above it. And she doesn't connect to reality. No one has to speak to police, 100%. But the fact that she never even asked why they were there or what was going on with her kids, it just made her look even more guilty. Because the rational parent would be like, what's going on? What happened? Why are you here? She said nothing. But she thinks that that was good. Again, her mind still is not clear, and she's not seeing things rationally. And she's still not expressing anything about her kids. It's disturbing.
Helpful. Like, if you ever get arrested, don't say anything. I just didn't say anything. And she
How
was like,
did you find Lamar? Was he just assigned to you coincidentally, or did you?
So she has an attorney that she's used for connections, and I called him and no one answered. But then she called him, and he said, I only do like business law. I don't do criminal law. But here's a number of 2 people who do that I would highly recommend. And so she gave the 2 numbers, and I got the number from Kevin. I don't know how the numbers got from. I don't know how, but Kevin said, here's your attorney and this is her attorney, and that was the last time I talked to Kevin, and cuffed me and said, again, they cuffed me again, and then they told me you're under arrest and then they told me two of the charges, and then they had me get in the patrol car, and that's when I saw Jodi. I saw Jodi was also in the patrol car, and she had surgery on her shoulder. She couldn't put her hands behind her back, so then they pulled her out and changed up the way they arrested her so she could drive with her hands in front of her. And then we had about a 45-minute drive to the jail, and that was the last time I spoke to her. We were in the back, and we didn't say a whole lot. I mean, we talked the whole time, but I don't remember really saying a whole lot. We hummed a couple hymns, and she was still justifying the whole time. She's like, don't worry, we'll have our day in court. And then when we were booked in, they put us in separate cells, and we've been in separate cells ever since. So
Moved quite a bit of audio because, frankly, all she did was ramble about being in the jailhouse or being in the police station and answering questions and not answering questions, and then talking about getting into the car and out of the car. And there was just a lot of unnecessary dialogue here. And her sister doesn't even really say anything. It's very interesting to me. But anyways, what I think is interesting in that is that Jodi got her attorney. And then the other part that I thought was funny was that she said that she was justifying. Jodi was still justifying on the way after their arrest, and that they would get out of it. But so was Ruby. Ruby spoke to Kevin and literally said that she didn't do anything wrong, that this world didn't understand evil, that she was saving her kids. That's what Ruby was telling people. Not just Jodi was justifying, so was Ruby. Ruby was 100% being controlled by this woman, but at the same time, like she reduces her culpability to brainwashing and control, and like acts as though she was not doing these same things to her sister. And then her sister's like, does this trigger you? Like her sister using her as like an abuse victim. And sure, in a way, Ruby's been victimized by Jodi, but at the same time, where's the concern for the children?
Do you hate talking about that kind of stuff? Does it trigger anything, or is it just?
No, I don't. I think it's
fun?
No, I don't mind talking about it. And it's maybe good for me to talk about it. I don't know if you like talking about it.
I was just wondering if it triggered anything. But if you're doing okay mentally, and then that's okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's I think putting the pieces together and just seeing, like, she knew she was lying the whole time. Like, and it's embarrassing too to like repeat it. It's like, oh my gosh, how gullible was I? Oh my gosh, how much power I gave this person, and I didn't see it. But when I realized, so she had, her attorney's name is Doug Terry, and mine's Lamar, and Lamar, you know, maybe a month into it, he's maybe not even that long, he's like, Jodi denies everything. She denies having anything to do with this. And I was shocked. I was like, what? And I'm still telling Lamar, like, you know, all of the justifications and all of the, you know, I'm talking like a criminal. I sound like a mad person. He was so patient with me. He was so patient with me. He would just look at me and, like, kind of dumbfounded, like I'd said 2 + 2 is 7, and I really believed it, and he would just stare at me. I'm like, what am I saying that's so off? And but that's because I really believed it. But then when I heard that Jodi was not talking like that, she was denying the whole thing, it told me she knew all along. Mm-hmm. And that's when I realized she knew all along, and she's hiding it. And then I was like, crap, what am I done? And that's when things kind of started turning. I was like, she's not been honest. I didn't know she wasn't honest. I didn't know she would lie. And it's like, what else has she been lying about? Where else have I been deceived?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
What was that?
Oh, no, I was just, agreeing.
Yeah.
You did see it.
Yeah. Yeah, and it was just like the little string that started pulling apart this fabric. I'm like, oh my gosh, what have I done? Like, what? So I can talk about it now. Yeah, go ahead.
Lamar was just very, very kind that day that we met with him. It was a very time and just visit with us.
Oh, like miraculous.
Yeah. He and his wife.
Mhm. Yeah, he had a way of, like, he didn't beat around the bush. Like, there were some times he would say things that were shocking to me. Like, he would, like, repeat what I said, but he would say it in a different tone so I could hear myself. And he's like, is that really what you think? And I'm like, oh. And he would, but then there were other times.
You have 1 minute remaining for this call.
Do you want to end the call, or do you want me to call you back? How do you want to?
We can end for today, and then we can always talk again. So.
Yeah.
I'm just really glad that he's there to kind of help you through it, and.
Yeah. Well, that first night I was in the jail, I just felt really strongly like, I'm sending you help. Help is coming.
Yeah.
And I just felt like that was Lamar, and he's been very, very helpful. I'm grateful for him.
Well, that's what we've all been praying for this whole time. So I'm glad that even it's a different kind of help, but I'm glad it's finally here.
Me too. I'll take it. Like, I hate this, but I'm taking it.
Of course. Yeah.
Jodi Hildebrandt denying everything and effectively going to put it all on Ruby was what it took for Ruby to wake up from Jodi. Think about that. She was going to go down with her guns blazing because she believed Jodi and believed what she was doing. I don't know if y'all read the journal. I know that other channels have shared what she was saying, and frankly, I've read the journal, and the journal is public, and you can all search for the journal if you want to read the journal. But when you read the journal, it is very clear that Ruby believes everything that she is saying, but also she feels justified in what she's doing because she believes in what she's saying. But also, it seems like Ruby and Jodi have these master plans for like this future that doesn't include her kids. The kids are the obstacle. And I know that the family will say that they didn't know and they tried, but Ruby shut them out. And I get that. But there was a lot of people that were so complicit in this situation that did not think about the best interests of the kids and are still not thinking about the best interests of the kids. On the day of sentencing, her family wasn't there to support the victims. They were there to support Ruby. Ruby was a perpetrator of horrific abuse and tried to suffocate and drown her son and kicked him, threw her kid into cactuses. It's atrocious. She starved them. She forced them to jump up on trampolines for days, climb hills, clean graveyards with shoes out, stand out in the sun in the desert. The family was less concerned about the kids and more concerned about Ruby. It's like the kids were just disposable. And if Ruby is, and this kind of tells me the difference between Ruby's family and Kevin. Kevin wasn't there at all on the day of her sentencing. Her kids weren't there on the day of her sentencing. Sherry, Chad, the two minor girls that are teenagers, none of them were there. The people that she victimized the most were not there to support her. People that she victimized the least, her family, is there, and they're still enabling her. Making her feel like, oh, you were just brainwashed. It's fine. It wasn't fine. Ruby is a danger to society because even though she was susceptible to these beliefs, she went there, and she went there hard. Because I feel like she got something out of it, and she wanted to be sadistic. And she didn't want her kids anymore. She didn't want to be a mom. She wanted her own life. And we'll never know why she was given the deal she was, but I hope she is in jail and prison longer than her kids are, and they're adults by the time she gets out. Because right now she still remains a danger to her children. So that's all for this video. I'd love to know what your thoughts are. Let me know if you watched Ruby, if you watched her descent into Jodi, if you had your own thoughts and opinions, if you're new to it, what are your thoughts? And if you haven't subscribed yet, make sure to subscribe and give this video a thumbs up. Bye, guys.